You ever get several rounds into a fantasy draft and feel like the entire world is against you? More specifically, your league mates. Like they got all your notes. They know exactly what you're thinking. They're reading your mind. And every time a new round comes up, every time you're about to be on the board, boom, you get sniped. 1 or 2 picks before it like clockwork every single round. It's maddening, 100%. But if you're not able to switch up your strategy on the fly, if you're not able to adjust, to adapt, or one might even say acclimate to whatever's happening in your draft, you're done before it even starts, even if you think it plays out the way you want it. That's why I want to cover must draft running backs in each round, the top 8 rounds to be specific. I'm not going to keep you here all day, but it's super important to know that going in each round, there are certain guys you want to target. And if you don't get them early on, you can switch the approach up and still find guys you really like at that position later in the draft, not reaching, making mistakes, and putting yourself behind the 8 ball going into the regular season. So I'm Dave Loughran with Stokastic Fantasy Football. Appreciate you guys being here. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. I try and read and respond to all of them. Let's make it happen. Round 1, Dalvin Cook, RB5, ADP of 8. Now, again, like I said, this is the first round. If you don't get guys you're looking for, you don't get a running back you really love, that's okay. We can make adjustments. We're going to hit on all of that. But I am looking, if I can, to land the running back, at least one in the first 2 rounds. I would like 2 and then go wide receivers later. But at the same time, there's so many running backs later in this draft that I'm okay with, that I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm not going to do anything stupid. And quite frankly, when it comes to Dalvin Cook with an ADP of 8, there's just no way he finishes with only 6 touchdowns again this year. He was top 5 in rushing touchdowns between 2019 and 2020, and with 6 in goal line carries last year, despite missing 4 games. He was 4th in carries inside the 10 and 5th overall in red zone attempts. Not to mention, Cook averaged just shy of 22 touches and 23 looks per game in 2021. Excellent volume. And while new Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell may not operate a run-first offense like Mike Zimmer's team did, we should still expect more targets for Cook. And it's very reasonable to think that we'll just see more scoring opportunities in general. There's a player later on this video who played on the most pass-heavy offense in the league last year, and he dominated. Remember, a rising tide lifts all ships. A capable pass-catching back like Cook, who's also a workhorse on rushing downs and plays 70 to 80% of snaps each week, not going to regress in this offense. He'll only get better. You simply cannot go wrong drafting Cook 8th overall in 2022. Round 2, Javonte Williams, RB13, 24th player off the board. There's a lot of speculation about Javonte Williams' workload with Melvin Gordon still in town, but I'm still confident that Williams pulls away with the bulk of carries relatively early on. Even Gordon came out last week and said the coaching staff is leaning towards Williams getting a more prominent role in his second year, and that he thinks that Williams will be, I quote, the guy this season. And it would make sense. He actually said that he thinks the coaching staff wants Williams to be the guy this year. It would make sense, though, because not only did they trade up to draft Williams in the 2nd round last year, but Williams finished 2nd in forced missed tackles. Phenomenal number, especially when you consider that he only had 3 fewer than Jonathan Taylor, despite having 129 fewer carries. He led the league in avoided tackles per attempt. He was 7th in yards after contact per attempt and 7th in PFF's elusive rating. Give credit to Gordon, too, because he did have a good season. I want to take nothing away from Gordon, but Williams is the younger, more skilled player, and he's a better pass catcher. So after finishing as the RB18 as a rookie, Melvin Gordon was the RB17, despite the Broncos having a bottom 10 offense and no competent quarterback, imagine what he's capable of doing with Russell Wilson at the helm on a team right now in Vegas that has the 6th shortest odds to be the highest scoring team in football. I would love to open my drafts going RB in the first 2 rounds. And if I grab Williams at the end of the 2nd, I'm more than satisfied with that. If you guys haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy yet, or more specifically played Best Ball, which is pretty much the greatest version of fantasy because you draft your teams, which is the best part of every season. You don't have to make any waiver transactions or trades. You don't have to pay attention to any of that. You just draft your team and you roll. And you can draft as many teams as you want over at Underdog Fantasy because they got Best Ball Mania right now. $10 million in prizes. Yeah, millions of dollars. Even if you finish first in the regular season and then are terrible in the playoffs, you still take home $1 million. Of course, I'm not saying, you're going to go home with $1 million, but the prize pools are massive. A lot of opportunity to make a lot of money, have a ton of fun, and get a first match up to $100 deposit bonus when you sign up using the promo code Stokastic, Stokastic, get you up to $100 first match deposit bonus at underdogfantasy.com. Some incredible contests, whether you're high stakes, low stakes, mid stakes, just looking to have some fun, doesn't matter. Amazing formats, massive prize pools, Underdog Fantasy, Stokastic is the promo code, gets you up to $100 when you sign up for the first time using Stokastic. Round 3, Leonard Fournette, RB14, 25th player off the board. Now, it's crazy to me that people don't talk about Leonard Fournette's 2021 season. I alluded to it earlier when we were talking about Dalvin Cook and potential changes on a more pass-heavy offense. Last year on a team with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, albeit some injuries mixed in and missed games along the way, Rob Gronkowski, and also the most pass-heavy team in football by a pretty wide margin, Leonard Fournette was the RB4 through week 15 before an injury sidelined him through the rest of the regular season. And in PPR formats, he was the RB3 behind only Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler. And despite missing 3 games, he still finished as the RB6 overall. Seriously, it was an amazing season for Fournette. He literally, easy for me to say, led all running backs in targets. All running backs in targets through the first 15 weeks. He played 14 games. And you say, yeah, they were the most pass-heavy team. Yeah, sure they were. But also, there were a lot of mouths to feed. That's how much that Tom Brady was passing. That Leonard Fournette still led all running backs in targets and receptions. Think about that. Oh, and Leonard Fournette was top 5 in red zone, goal line, and inside the 10 carries through his 14 games. And that doesn't even include his 18 targets inside the red zone, which ranked 8th in the league, not among running backs, just overall. And he was averaging 19 total looks per game in arguably the league's most lethal offense. The Bucs have the second shortest odds to be the highest scoring team in football this year again as well. So unless you're worried about Rashaad White stealing a bunch of pass catching duties, Fournette literally stands to have another huge workload in one of the league's most preeminent offenses. And he's being drafted right now as the RB14 in the early 3rd round. Give me every single bit of this. Round 4, Travis Etienne, RB19, ADP 45. Now, this is a controversial one. Well, I'll get to that. But first, the Jaguars running backs behind Travis Etienne right now look like this. An undrafted yet semi-impressive running back in James Robinson. We all remember his season a couple of years ago as a rookie, who hasn't fully recovered from an ACL tear yet. A 5th-round rookie in Snoop Connor and an undrafted depth RB in Mekhi Sargent if he even stays on the team. For me, it's kind of maddening to see all of the reports and articles, etc., recently talking about, how Doug Peterson used his running backs in a committee with Philly and how that could be an indication of how he'll use Travis Etienne in Jacksonville. And then this is the best part. Buckle up because this gets funny. And this is on, these are on notable sites, like what are considered to be reputable places. They go on to reference his starters from these years, Doug Peterson's starters with Philly. Ryan Matthews, he was no good when he came to Philly. LeGarrette Blount, he was fine, but he was clearly getting old. He literally retired after the next season. Josh Adams, I read an article that actually referred to him as the lead back in order to justify saying that we could see a split in Jacksonville. And then there was Miles Sanders, who in these articles, they always fail to mention that he averaged 18 looks per game in Doug's last season with Philly. So this is all I'm saying. If Etienne is as good as we think he's going to be, let's not forget he was a late 1st-round draft pick. It's egregious to think that he isn't going to get enough work to pay off a late 4th-round price tag. With former Clemson teammate under center in Trevor Lawrence, no more Urban Meyer at the helm, and what looks like we could see a functional, if not slightly above average, let's say average, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, offense in 2022 with Jacksonville, Etienne should have every opportunity to excel in his first real year on the field with the Jaguars. I think late 4th-round value, mid 4th-round value on someone that is as good a pass catcher and should see as enough rushing work to get the job done on Etienne is perfectly reasonable. 5th round, Breece Hall, RB21, ADP 49. Now, let me preface this with, when we say must draft running backs, understand that you don't have to go in and specifically target certain players. But if we're doing each round, some of these rounds are a lot less enticing than the others. Like around the same ADP as Breece Hall is J.K. Dobbins, who's coming back from an ACL, has basically a run-first quarterback. Gus Edwards, when he gets back, is good. There's a lot working against J.K. Dobbins, although he could still have a good season, but there's no doubt he'll see touchdown regression from his rookie year. Then you've got guys like Josh Jacobs. Who knows what his status is in Las Vegas right now? Elijah Mitchell dealing with an injury and a lot of question marks there. Antonio Gibson, these are all guys within 10 spots of Breece Hall. That's why I'm adding him here. So if you get to this round, you feel like you need a running back, right? You're just really lacking depth there. This is where I'd go for these reasons. And I think that we could see Breece Hall's draft stock slip a little bit too after the preseason. I'm already seeing him in some spots go into the 5th round. And that's perfectly fine with me. As a matter of fact, I welcome it. There's also some concerns that he played in week 2 of the preseason ineffectively. So while Michael Carter was rested, so obviously speculation was Michael Carter the starter. Are we really going to read that far into it to the point where we don't want to draft Hall in the 5th round? I mean, he's a rookie. If you do actually zoom out and look at, take a 30,000 foot view here, Hall was the first running back off the board in the 2022 draft, early 2nd round. He's a freakish athlete, scored 97th percentile on the 40-yard dash, 98th percentile speed score, and 94th percentile burst score. Player profile has his best comp as Jonathan Taylor, and I think that's accurate. Meanwhile, Michael Carter, a fine but unspectacular 4th round pick from last year, stands at 5'8". I said in a previous video too that Hall is everything you're looking for in a running back prospect, or more importantly, a rookie who could provide immediate league-winning upside. He's coming off back-to-back years at Iowa State with 1,400 plus rushing yards and 20 plus touchdowns, and is a more than capable pass catcher to boot. He has the vision, patience, elusiveness, speed, size. He has all of it. And while the Jets did lose Mekhi Becton for the season, it's still a league average to potentially above average offensive line heading into 2022. So if you're telling me that I can get an elite young talent in the 5th round, I'm taking him every time, even if he's on the Jets. 6th round, A.J. Dillon, RB25, ADP of 69. I know I've kind of beaten this one to death, but I know a lot of you guys weren't watching fantasy videos in late June or even July. Plus, I'm talking about a must-draft running back in every round. So I would be remiss to not talk about A.J. Dillon in the 6th round, because this is just how I feel. And it was bittersweet to hear Matt LaFleur the other day say that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon were the 1A and 1A. I'm not misquoting that. 1A and 1A running backs in the Packers offense. Because if you'd done a little digging already, you'd have known that. And you would have gotten much better value on Dillon heading into 2022. But still, with an ADP of 69, in the 6th round, mid to late 6th round, I think you're still getting great value here. Because the truth is, Dillon was the busier back between these two over the final half of the season in 2021. He and Jones played 6 games together over the last half of the year, right? So over the last 8 games, Jones was inactive for 2 of them. They played 6 games together. And in those games, Dillon literally led the league in goal line carries. Jones had 1 over that span. And even if your argument is that Jones wasn't fully healthy over that stretch, which might be true, it doesn't take away from the fact that LaFleur was entirely comfortable using Dillon a lot on a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. He saw 86 carries, 14 targets, and 100 total looks to close out the season in those 6 games with Jones. Jones himself saw 55, 24, and 79 respectively. Now, don't get me wrong. I know Jones is obviously going to be very involved, but Dillon's being drafted in the 6th round on a team that should once again be a top 10 offense. And to make Dillon even more appealing, this is the part I think this is where people get misled. To make him even more appealing, he caught 34 of 37 targets last year. He averaged 1.57 yards per route run and 9.2 yards per reception. You're crazy if you think Jones is the only player in this backfield who's going to benefit in the passing game from all the vacated targets from Davante Adams and to a lesser extent, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. In my opinion, Dillon's an absolute steal in the late 6th round. Anytime I need a running back there, I'm loading up on A.J. Dillon. 7th round, Tony Pollard, RB29, ADP 84. If you go with a couple elite running backs early and then you load up on wide receivers, maybe a top tight end after the 2nd round, Tony Pollard makes for a perfect RB3 in the 7th round. Ezekiel Elliott, yes, is still in Dallas on a massive contract, no less, but that contract might be the only reason Pollard hasn't passed him on the depth chart yet. Now, I'm not saying Elliott has 0 left in the tank, but by almost every metric, Pollard is the better running back right now. Listen to some of these stats from last season. In 2021, Pollard finished second in yards per attempt, 5.5, and only behind Rashaad Penny, who played much fewer games. He was fifth in yards after contact per attempt, eighth in PFF's elusiveness rating, and forced 8 more missed tackles than Ezekiel Elliott, despite having 107 fewer attempts. Think about that. 8 more forced missed tackles, 107 fewer attempts. And in the passing game, Pollard was top 3 in yards per routes run among running backs, while Elliott was 43rd. Pollard averaged 8.6 yards per reception, while Elliott averaged 6.1. And I know we found out after the season that Elliott had the PCL injury, but still, Pollard was fantastic, and you can't take that away from him. Elliott ranked far behind Pollard in all of those aforementioned metrics and has a whole lot of mileage, more specifically, 1,650 career carries. He had more carries as a rookie back in 2016 than Pollard has for his career right now. So do I think that we could see a real split here, or even Pollard pulling away further as the season wears on? Yeah, I definitely do. And the biggest concern is Zeke was still the clear goal line back last year. But word that Pollard could be lining up not just in the backfield, but also as a receiver means there's a ton of upside. 7th round, yes, please. 8th round, Rashaad Penny, RB32, ADP 91. If Rashaad Penny wasn't already on your radar, he sure as shit needs to be now. Pete Carroll's been the quintessential say one thing and mean the other type of football coach when it comes to this Ken Walker injury. First, he reported that it was a mild hernia thing. Then he underwent a procedure, and Carroll said it wasn't a hernia, and he expected him back for week 1. Now it's a hernia again. He's still tender after the procedure, and there's no current timetable for his return. I already loved the upside we were getting from Penny in the 8th round, 9th round on some sites, which was the result of 2 different factors, talking about why he's fallen to the 8th and 9th round. First, health hasn't exactly been Penny's friend. He's been hurt more than he's been healthy. And second, the Seahawks drafted Walker in the 2nd round. But I think the one big thing that people are missing, and no, I'm not talking about the fact that Penny was the RB1 over the final 5 weeks of the season with 135 plus rushing yards in 4 of those games, 6 rushing touchdowns, and almost 700 yards from scrimmage. I'm talking about the fact that the Seahawks re-signed Penny to a 1-year, $6 million deal this year. This sounds like a situation to me where they're saying, all right, we drafted our running back of the future in Walker, but we're not going to be good this year, and there's no need to throw him straight into the fire. Let's just run Penny until the wheels fall off for 1 season before handing the keys over to the young guy. I still expect Penny to be the lead back in 2022. He just needs to stay healthy. And we know when he's healthy, he's actually very good. And now with Walker's status up in the air to start the year, it's even more reason to roll the dice on Penny as an 8th round pick. Appreciate you guys watching. As always, hit that thumbs up before you leave. Follow me at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D, and we'll keep rolling up until the regular season. Peace.